first circumnavigation, that was really a leap of faith. We didn't know if we could do it. We didn't tell anyone. We just, with a great deal of encouragement and support from Glenn, Glenn Works, we decided we'd go give it a try. And when he did fall ill and left us, we set off on our own. Still our family and friends. All word seemed to spread like wildfire. And we were very glad when we were able to accomplish it.
The last trip took 10 days with a rest day as well. The legs that we did were shorter. And so therefore not as trying, not quite as difficult. Our days ended quite a lot earlier. That's once we got past the first 3 days, which were the illnesses. Glenn was with us, he got sick. That had delayed a bit as well. But after that, it became reasonable days.
This time round, two things we're going to do. Because on the last trip, not far from here, Galera Point, I, in my tiredness, asked Jean, what was that mass of land out there to our right? And he said, that's Tobago, you big idiot. So I thought about it for a little while, and before I could even open my mouth, he said, don't even think about it. In other words, he wasn't prepared to make a right turn then. We were looking at a video one of our colleagues took about the conclusion of our trip. And at that time, Jean's wife, Philippa, was with us. And she said, you know, you guys didn't do too bad a job, but the only thing you did wrong was you should have done it for charity. And those two things added up. We felt that we would like to include Tobago in the next time. And then we also felt that it could be done for some very deserving causes as well.
Back in 1977, October 1977, I got involved in a car accident, vehicle accident on the way to do a flight, in fact. It was a pretty bad one. I spent about 2 months in hospital. And this year I was told things like I wouldn't be able to walk again. And then when I started walking, they said I wouldn't be able to fly again. And then when I flew again, they said, well, you'd only fly for 10 years. So it's just been a constant bit of uphill, but the athletic part of my life, which I really enjoyed, changed a lot. And that is kind of what got me into kayaking, because it's something I can do and I can match strokes with most guys. Handling the boat is a little more difficult for me because the way a kayak is, it's supposed to fit you. And because of some of the restrictions I have in my legs, because the injuries were on both sides, the knee on one, hip on the other, I don't get to fit in the boat quite as well. So heavy wave action is a little more difficult for me than it would be for someone who had that ability. There are a lot of times, for me anyway, when you feel, what am I doing here? I'm tired, I want to stop. I mean, you don't feel great for 9 hours of paddling. If you stop, you're not going to make destination. So, kind of mission-oriented. That is something that we definitely have in common.
I think I've been thinking about it for nearly 2 years. And when I mentioned it to him, he had some personal issues he had to deal with. And up until recently, it looked very much like it was going to be a solo trip. Well, I'm here to tell you now, I'm very glad he changed his mind. There's no sort of physical regimen or dietary thing really that I've ever gone into. It's just a general lifestyle and a lot of paddling, so that when you do get into the kayak, hopefully you'll be accustomed to how it feels, and I can promise you 12 hours, well, maybe even 2 and 3 hours in a kayak. You'll soon know what I mean when you say you got to get accustomed to the fit and the way it moves. So that's it. Jean, I think, has come along with me on many of these training sessions. We call them training sessions. But just in case he decided to come. And so we have put in the work, I think. But now is the test. Cut it out. Mine now. Andrew, we just... I think yesterday was equally hard, if not harder, because we always know that Point Galeota can be quite intimidating, but particularly at lunchtime when we got there, waves were about 6 feet. There was that current again in our face, about 2-3 knots, and the wind was howling. So we were busy. We were tested. We had a couple of close scrapes. Literally, actually, my kayak ran over a submerged rock, and fortunately it was just a scrape. We continued, and then you have to head out east towards Africa. You want to turn north and come up to Mayaro, but they're constantly breaking waves because there are rocks all along there, and you have to navigate your way through that. So we did that, and we said, now that we're on the east coast, maybe we'll get a little help from the current and a little push. It didn't happen. Same story, wind and current against us, so it took us a little while to get there, but say what?
Well, wish us an easier day.
I wish somebody would find an easy day.
It's been payback ever since the first easy day.
Mother Nature obviously thinks, oh, so you guys think you're going to do this again, do you? You had so much fun the first time. Well, guess what? I'm here to tell you I'm still the boss. That's what she said.
The Paddle for Charity Challenge will continue. We now return to the Paddle for Charity Challenge.
I found since we were coming up the East Coast that I was toting a lot of water around inside the boat with me. I say, but wait now, this boat's sinking.
On its own, having to bail?
Yeah, I had to bail. Alright, because we have cleaned out the boat, we took out the seat. And what we found was on the right side upper, the seat was rubbing against the fiberglass, and it has actually made a hole. It's quite a little scratch. And it is definitely a hole, and we have to patch because it can't go back in the water. So yeah, the only thing on my mind now then is time. How long we'll need for that to set and dry and things.
The boat is trying to say it's tired and it's a last trip.
We intended to have a whole communication thing. So we had cell phones and we had radios. But it turned out that it wasn't convenient for them to be using them at sea. You know, there's always the danger it would get wet and so on. So eventually we settled for a system where we'd say, okay, call me at 12, that sort of thing. But of course, when you're supposed to make contact at 12 or at 4, and the contact isn't made, then, you know, me on land, not sure of what is happening, it gets a bit dicey. Even from day one, because I was still packing, and they were shooting off down the Gulf. So when he called me at 12, he says, we are 6 miles from Vestany. I was still packing in Diego Martin.
The most challenging part of the Tobago crossing will be the fact that we don't really know what to expect, not having done it. We don't have very much first-hand knowledge from anybody else who's done it either, even though it has been done. So we reckon the problems will be primarily the currents, which can be expected to be as high as 3 knots, particularly in the area of the shallows. We're going to get a fair amount of strong wind, which will not be in our favor, and big wave action, which makes kayaking a little more difficult. Those are the primary challenges, and those of course can make it for a very long day. And again, that's something we would rather not have. But like you said, I think 9-10 hours is probably a good guess.
Hey, let's go. Let's go do it.
You've been drinking your inshore?
Every day.
They didn't hear that question, right? So they don't know.
Good enough.
If we don't say what it is we're drinking.
Yeah, we've been having our inshore every day.
Thank you very much. We had a bit of a delay because there was a thunderstorm when we got up this morning. We hope that was not a sign of things to come. And about the first 3 or 4 hours after, that was a little rough getting out around Toko Point and into the channel. It calmed down a bit. We had a very strong current for a while there. We thought we were going to be able to maintain about 3 miles an hour. It dropped down to 2. And when Jean said something about, how do you feel about 1.5 miles an hour? I said, not very good at all, because you're just hovering at that speed. We would normally kayak at about 4 or 5 miles an hour. But if we have a current in our face at about 3 or 4 miles an hour, excuse me, we're not going very fast. So with some superb navigational skills on his part, some fancy finger work with his GPS system. Together with Peter Della Rosa of Play Hooky, who was Island Yacht Charters, we got down and we had to replot some of our courses to get out of that current, and they did good work. That's why we're here at the time we are here. And we're very pleased to be here.
I'm still nervous about the north of Tobago and coming around the north side, coming down the east side of Tobago. I'm still a little nervous about that. But them crossing the channel between the 2 islands was a biggie for me, and I'm very relieved that that part is over.
Well, I do emailing for all those friends and family across the world that are very interested in the whole venture. So I'm the emailer.
We will see support for this venture. It's a very difficult exercise. I saw it today from start to finish, from Kumana to here, and I could tell you, those fellas put out everything to get here in 9 hours. It was even tough for us coming over in the boat. And we had drinks, and we had food, and we just looked at them in agony sometimes and said, but how could they do this? We kept talking to one another, time, these fellas are mad. They know what they're about, and they're heroes.
That a hero can save us. I'm not you can't put into words what it is to see those two guys. You know, it's easy to sit on a boat and have a sandwich, have a drink, take a little sleep. You know, to see those guys just constantly paddling against the current, the tides, the weather, it just inspires me, you know, to see people like that. You know, a lot of people say that the hardest part of the trip is now completed, but every day that goes by, you know, the next day's a longer day. So for them, you know, they'll be in bed, I'm sure, by 7:30 this evening, and 4:30, 5 o'clock the next morning, it all starts again.
Same old song, just a drop of water in an endless sea.
There's more when we return. We now return to the Paddle for Charity Challenge.
To me, it's like doing a marathon every day for 13 days. For somebody, if somebody trained 26 miles every day, but for 12 days, just think how hard that is. And I would compare it to this, because these fellas are using their arms and shoulders continuously, sometimes for 13, 14 hours. The legs, even though they're not using their legs get cramped from inactivity. They get sores all over their backs. Jean has a lot of sores on his back. Wayne has a lot of blisters on his hands, even though they're wearing gloves. So it's a tremendous wear and tear on their bodies. And I think anybody who's an athlete would understand the serious amount of pressure that these guys have been through.
If you really want to, you can seize the day. Only if you want to, when you fly
we know how treacherous it is out there. And we admire their bravery, and I was just inspired to help. And we talked about $100 a mile and see how that would get him close to his goal of $100,000. And it just so happens it just about made it. So we made it $35,000 and took them over the top. Apparently they've done much better than that.
His Excellency's commendations read as follows. Dear captains, I congratulate you on the recent feat that you accomplished by traveling around Trinidad and Tobago by kayak in 12 days. This was indeed a courageous adventure. I have also been advised that this endeavor was undertaken in an effort to raise funds in support of a number of selected charities, and that in fact it was highly successful, with over 100,000 being donated to these charities. This selfless contribution should be an inspiration to the entire nation. I commend you and wish you well for the future. Yours sincerely, Arthur N.R. Robinson.
I don't see any heroism in it. No, I find it difficult to understand, really. I suppose we just caught them at the right time. Maybe they were looking for heroes, but I don't see it.
But we keep looking at each other and say, who are they talking about? Were there two other guys that paddled out there behind us? Because we really don't see ourselves in that role. I have said it before, and Ja has agreed with me, that when we see things like little children from the learning school, and they have to face their challenges every day for the rest of their lives, and the AIDS victims and the cancer victims, and the people who give all their time so selflessly to work with these people, I think they're the ones that qualify more for this description as heroes, not Ja and
I think they're heroes. I think they're heroes big time. I think it's really unusual for that kind of human sacrifice. In terms of actual exertion, to drive yourself to the physical limit to raise money for charity, I think it's unusual. I can't think of another thing offhand, another situation where that's actually happened. Because this was about stretching yourself to extreme physical limits, extreme, beyond, they've downplayed everything. It was really, really difficult. And in so doing, they've raised money, and I think that's unusual. I think that's very heroic. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll second.
Oh, from that point of view, I guess I understand what you mean, yeah.